What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. I just got through watching the Errol Spence Jr. Spence-Ugas press conference that took place at the Star, the Dallas Cowboys training and practice facility. Now the fight is happening at AT&T Stadium, home of the Dallas Cowboys. And they had Jerry Jones in attendance, which was powerful. Now, the press conference wasn't nothing to write home about, to say the least, but it did have some interesting comments about both fighters in regards to their quest to become undisputed in the welterweight division. Now, when they went to the Q&As, that means the question and answers, one of the persons asked both fighters if they're able to secure the victory on April 16th and be the WBA, WBC, and IBF unified welterweight champion, would that make them the big baller shot caller at 147? I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what the gist of the question was asked to both fighters. And Errol Spence Jr. say, "What you talking about, man? I've been the big baller shot caller." And Spence-Ugas said 200%. So you got the WBO welterweight champion, Terrence Crawford, sitting out there, and he's in prime position to take on the winner. But according to both fighters, he's gonna have to bow down to a player that's greater than him. Actually, remember that West Side, bow down to a player that's greater than you. They asking Terrence Crawford to bow down to a champion that's greater than him. They're going to be holding 3 titles. He only going to be holding 1. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But not too long ago, baby, probably about I ain't going to say a couple of days ago, probably last week, maybe 4 or 5 days ago, the purse got revealed for this upcoming fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Spence-Ugas. And Errol Spence Jr. was getting a $1.5 million guarantee plus 50% of the pay-per-view. Spence-Ugas was getting a $1 million guarantee plus 50% of the pay-per-view. So a lot of people are like, oh man, he give Ugas a 50-50 deal, but he talking about 60-40 with Terrence Crawford. Yeah, it's 50-50 on the pay-per-view, but it's not going to be 50-50 on what each fighter going to bring home at the end of the day. You know, it's an A side and it's a B side. And clearly, Errol Spence Jr. is the A side and Spence-Ugas is the B side. So, of course, okay, we can do 50-50 with Spence versus Crawford. Say Spence does get through and beat Spence-Ugas, and he goes into negotiations with Terrence Crawford. You know, they can do a 50-50 pay-per-view. Make no mistake about it. 50-50 on the pay-per-view, but what's going to be the guarantee for each fighter? I think Terrence Crawford's got to be realistic in his demands, and he's got to at least say, look, okay, just give me basically the same deal you gave Spence-Ugas. I'm not saying Terrence Crawford take $1 million, because that fight between Spence and Crawford is worth more than a fight between Spence and Ugas. So say Errol gets $5 million. Terrence Crawford will be well within his rights to ask for $4.5 million. If you getting 5, give me $4.5 million, we do 50-50 on the pay-per-view. I think that's fair, based on what Spence-Ugas is getting in this fight. Now, if he say, I want 50-50 straight down the line, I want 50-50 on the pay-per-view, and I want 50-50 on the purse split. If he asks for that, and Errol Spence Jr. tell him to go kick rocks, then we can't blame nobody but Terrence Bud Crawford. Can't blame Errol, because Errol going to be the unified champion. He doing the heavy lifting at 147. He doing the bigger numbers, not only on pay-per-view, but at the gate. Because outside of Omaha, Terrence Crawford do not do big numbers. You know, he does good numbers on ESPN, but we talking about gate numbers and pay-per-view. His last pay-per-view did 130,000 versus Sean Porter. He did 50 to 60,000 in his first pay-per-view versus Victor Postal. I know there was reasons why that fight went to HBO pay-per-view. That fight actually didn't have no business going to pay-per-view, but due to the economic climate that was going down between HBO at that time and Top Rank Boxing, that forced that fight to pay-per-view. But nevertheless, the fight did 50 to 60,000. That was a unification fight featuring the 2 top fighters in the junior welterweight division. They should have been able to do better numbers than 50 to 60,000. You know, they couldn't even crack 100,000 in that fight. And that was a big fight at that time. And he did, what, 150,000 against Amir Khan? So his numbers pale in comparison to Errol Spence Jr. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But some interesting comments by both fighters. But both fighters have said that they do want to go for undisputed after this fight. Now, Spence-Ugas made those comments, but he had a caveat to those comments, because he said, look, when and if I beat Errol Spence Jr., I want to take on Terrence Crawford next, or Keith One-Time Thurman. He threw Keith One-Time Thurman at the end. So, again, Keith One-Time Thurman is walking on the same side of the street as Errol Spence Jr. and Spence-Ugas. And I advise Terrence Crawford to go and meet with Al Haymon and sign with Al Haymon as his advisor. A lot of people been out here saying, oh man, Terrence Crawford need to go sign a multi-fight deal with Al Haymon in the PBC. It don't work like that. Terrence Crawford is not a big enough attraction to be signing a multi-fight deal with anybody. Y'all ain't just seen this movie before with him signing a multi-fight deal with Top Rank Boxing, and his promoter, Bob Arum, out here talking about he lost more money on Terrence Bud Crawford fights, and the money that he lost on his fights, he could have built a mansion in Beverly Hills. Y'all don't remember that? Al Haymon ain't gonna get out there and say that, but Al Haymon ain't gonna get caught up under contract to begin with like that. You know what I'm saying? He ain't even gonna look at the numbers. He gonna say, look here, man, these are the numbers you producing. You're a great fighter, arguably the #1 fighter in the sport of boxing, pound for pound, but these are the numbers that you are producing. And ain't no way in the hell I can give you anywhere close to the money that you got under your old contract with Top Rank Boxing. So what he needs to do is sign with Al Haymon as an advisor, and he in there like swimwear. He in like Flynn. He'll be able to get the big names in the welterweight division that'll sign in a line with Al Haymon along with himself once he's signed with Al Haymon. That's what he needs to do. Sign Al Haymon as his advisor. He don't need to sign no multi-fight contract with no Al Haymon in the PBC, because there ain't no multi-fight contract in the cards anyway. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But that's some of the interesting developments that came from Errol Spence Jr. versus Spence-Ugas press conference that went down in Arlington, Texas. Now, Errol Spence Jr. did say at the press conference that he expects this fight to do around 50,000 fans in attendance for this matchup, and it remains to be seen if that does come to fruition. Now, when Errol Spence Jr. fought Mikey Garcia, that fight generated a little over 47,000 fans in attendance. And Mikey Garcia at that time is a bigger name than Spence-Ugas is at this moment. So we will have to see what happens. I think more realistic number is if they can do around about 40,000 for Errol Spence Jr. versus Spence-Ugas, because Spence is a bigger star than he was when he fought Mikey Garcia, but Mikey Garcia had a lot to do with the fight generating that type of crowd, as along with Errol Spence had a lot to do with that. So that was more like a 50-50 deal. They had a lot of Mexican fans in attendance for that fight, and they had a lot of African-American fans in attendance for that fight. And some of the Mexican fans were Errol Spence Jr. fans. A lot of them were Mikey Garcia fans. And he had a lot of the African-American fans. Majority of those fans were Errol Spence Jr. fans. So I think both fighters contributed to the fight generating that type of mass crowd. But I don't think Ugas has that type of appeal. Now, he's from Cuba. He trains in Florida. So maybe the Cubans will come out in attendance for this fight. That remains to be seen. We have to just see how it all plays out. But I don't think it's going to do 50,000 like Errol Spence Jr. said he hoped it would do in the press conference. I think 40,000 is more realistic. We will have to see what happens and see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts about the comments that Ugas and Spence made in regard to becoming undisputed at 147 pounds. Do you think the winner will end up fighting Crawford, or you think that Keith One-Time Thurman, who's aligned with Al Haymon, along with Spence-Ugas, will end up getting the win of that fight? Let me know your thoughts about Errol Spence Jr. saying that the fight, in his opinion, will generate 50,000 in attendance. Or you believe, like I believe, that it's more closer to 40,000 in attendance for this particular matchup? Or you think it's going to be either low or high? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Follow me on JBsports 3303. That's my Twitter handle. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports the man, the myth, the legend. And I holler.